All right, welcome to Talk-Jitsu with host Uki Mike, Joey Boretski, and me, Jordan Preisinger from Jordan Teaches Jiujitsu. Today we have a great episode for you guys, and this time we promised not to talk about the ecological approach, because I know I said that last time and we talked about it, and we'll probably talk about it this time too, to be honest. Never take my word for it. So, but what we do want to start with is the beef between Craig Jones and Mo Hassim that runs ADCC. I think it's always interesting to talk about trauma, and this is actually a really good and important topic in jiu-jitsu. So basically what's happening is ADCC doesn't offer much money to competitors, and they only pay competitors that win. You need to win first place. Am I right about that?
Top four get paid.
Oh, top four. Okay. And what is the pay for top four?
Other than, I think the absolute is different, but for the weight class, it's $10,000 if you win. I believe it's $6,000 for second place, $2,000 for third place, and $1,000 for fourth place.
That's not very much, even for first place. Like all the preparation, all the time, and you're the best in the world, and you're getting $10,000 to win. I think that's super messed up.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's absurd. It's up to them. Like, obviously, they're their own organization. They're allowed to charge how much decide how much they want to pay. Like, that's totally their prerogative. But I think it's kind of sad that as a sport of grappling, we've basically just accepted that like the biggest prize you're going to get is $10,000 for being the best guy in your weight class on the planet. And like to say like, oh, you're the second best guy, here's $6,000. Like, congratulations, you made a month's salary for someone with a decent paying job for being the second best grappler in your weight class on the planet. That it's upsetting, and it's really upsetting, especially seeing how much ADCC makes. Like Mike and I were talking off air, like, you know, they're selling out these arenas for the main event, hundreds of dollars a ticket, tens of thousands of people. They're making a gate. Like, I understand it takes a lot of production to put this thing together, but they're now running these ADCC Opens. They make a lot of money, man. Like, for people who are like confused about how much tournaments make, if a tournament's charging you $150 and 1,000 people register, you are making quite a bit of money, because venues do not cost $100,000 to rent out for a day. And yes, you have to pay staff, you have to buy medals, but the more these things run, like you own the match, you travel them from place to place, they're making a lot of money off these tournaments. They can afford to pay the athletes, and not to get into like who it's backed by and like maybe a sport washing aspect of things, but like for people who don't know, ADCC stands for Abu Dhabi Combat Club. It is backed and funded and was originally by people with quite a bit of personal wealth.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you nailed it. Like, I think it actually, it's not good for the sport. Like, it's not going to grow the sport when you make so little. It's going to deter people, for like good athletes, from wanting to actually do it, right? And that's one problem with MMA too, is that you don't make a lot of money, but you make more than grappling. But the problem with MMA is that you don't always get the best athletes because they do other sports, and it makes it even more so with grappling, because you can only make $10,000 getting first place. So what Craig's is, he's upset about it, and what he's doing is doing a charity seminar and using the proceeds to pay athletes at ADCC. Not that they're going to be getting a lot of money from that, but it's just kind of like a, you know, screw you to Mo, and show that paying the athletes is important. And events do make a lot of money. Like, even like local events, like they make a ton of money. Local tournaments, a ton of money. I know, because I know people that run these events. ADCC, I don't know. Like, I assume that Flow pays them a lot of money, because most people, I would assume, only get Flow for ADCC in the first place. So I think there's got to be money there. And I think it's mostly a problem with, capitalism. Like, capitalism isn't bad. Like, I don't know if there's a better alternative, but it just the whole thing with the people want to pay people as little as possible so they can profit as much as possible. And there's such an income disparity. And, again, capitalism isn't necessarily like bad, but it doesn't mean that there's not cons to it. I think that's a great example of one con of capitalism is just, pay you as little as we can, but you're going to make us money, because they're making money off the athletes. They need money. Like, people wouldn't watch the other athletes. So yeah, I think it's super messed up.
I think it's really interesting. Like, you compared it and said the same thing about MMA there, which is kind of like a sport that grappling has modeled itself after in a way, like understandably so. But MMA is the same problem, man. Like, for people who don't know, there's been a big lawsuit that was settled recently. I don't know the terms of the settlement. I think that's still undisclosed. If you're really interested in the UFC lawsuit, the antitrust suit, follow the work of someone named John Nash. I believe he writes for Bloody Elbow. He does fantastic work following these things. But basically, it outlines the profits of the UFC over the years, the profits they've made, how much money and share they have in the MMA space of how much money, and how much they pay their athletes. And it's actually abysmal. It's terrible. I believe it's 10% of the UFC's net revenue, not total revenue, but net revenue is allocated to fighter pay. When you compare that to other big sports like basketball, NBA, NHL, NFL, like MLB, the big sports, these all have collective bargaining agreements where they're contractually obligated to spend at least 50% of the revenue on athlete pay, which is part of the reason you see these it's a pet peeve of mine when people are like, oh, athletes don't need to make $10 million per year. Well, if they're making $10 million per year, it's because their team, their league is making a lot of money and they're obligated to get 50% of it by collective bargaining. You don't see this in MMA. And part of the problem, I think, is these fighters, and the same thing goes for grappling. Like these athletes, it's a very individual sport. Like MMA is very individual. Jiu-Jitsu is very individual. You're the only one out there, and people really want to fight for themselves. And I think Craig is doing something interesting. Someone has to die on the sword for this to get fixed. Someone has to be willing to say, I'm not going to perform. I'm not going to bring the eyeballs of people coming to watch me until everyone gets paid, not just me. And what happens a lot in sports like UFC and grappling is people go, I don't care about anyone else getting paid as long as I get paid. This is where someone like Gordon's happy with the ADCC. Yeah, man, because you probably get a shitload of extra money on top of it. You're doing great. But the guy who's coming 8th isn't getting anything. We need to, as a group, get together and say, hey, it's got to be better. We got to do better or athletes won't take part. The problem with grappling is if all the best guys in the world get together and say we won't take part unless you pay us, they'll just find 16 other guys who would love to do it for pennies.
Yeah, and even if you do get first place, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make a ton of money from sponsorships and instructional sales. Because you think a guy like Giancarlo Bodoni, he won first place, but he's not necessarily the biggest name in jiu-jitsu. And I'd be curious to see how much he does make from instructionals. And just in general, a lot of these guys, I bet you, and I don't mean this conceitedly or arrogantly, but I bet you I make more money from instructionals than the majority of ADCC competitors and many champions. But I have to do a lot of work to do it. I'm working all the time on content creation and everything I'm doing. So to say that they can rely on that, well, they need to add a whole new job to what they already do. They need to do all the things I'm doing too. And doing that and competing is very hard. It's not just you can compete and you can sell instructional super easy. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. So that's what Mo's saying. It's oh, you win or you do well, you're going to make money through instructionals. And again, that is true, but you're not going to make an insane amount of money unless you put in an insane amount of effort, or unless you're someone like Gordon Ryan, who, is just very popular and well known in general. So it depends on the competitor, because some of them, I can't even remember who won last year of the lower weight divisions. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get as much notoriety as needed to actually make a really good living.
Imagine if they did that for the NBA and they said, hey, LeBron James, we'll pay you $5,000. But don't worry, you'll be on TV, so you'll be able to make sponsorships and sell products. So you'll actually make more money in the end. These guys wouldn't play for that. They'd be like, absolutely not. I'm not going to do that. You expect me to practice to become the best in the world, which, by the way, for most of these guys is a full-time job. You're not going to become the best in the world training 2 hours a day, 4 days a week. It's not going to happen. These guys, this is their career. They train very hard. Now you're telling them, hey, you got to basically get a full-time job of learning how to market, edit, do all this extra stuff that, one, they're probably not that good at. I'm not going to say any specific names, but you talk to some of these guys or you hear them talk who are at the top of their sport, and you're they're a really good athlete. They're intelligent for their sport, but for some athletes, and I'm sure this goes for every sport, but you're lucky you got your sport, man, because I don't know how well things would be going for you if you weren't good at your sport. Some of these guys aren't built for like marketing and creative stuff. They're just good grapplers, and that should be rewarded on its own. And I think part of the problem is a lot of these guys aren't willing to fight for that because they're afraid maybe if they speak out, they just won't be invited, or they'll get told no, or there'll be repercussions down the line. But like, if you guys aren't willing to fight for yourselves, who's going to fight for you? And I really applaud, like, I know Craig's kind of a jokester online and stuff, but I really applaud him for doing this because, you know, this could hurt his brand. It could hurt his reputation in the long run. Like, obviously winning these big tournaments is good for people. And I'm sure for Craig's legacy, like, he's never won an ADCC. I think I can't speak for him, but I'm pretty sure if you asked him if he would like an ADCC gold, I'm sure he would really enjoy that. I'm sure that would be like something he's wanted for a long time. So he's kind of maybe giving up that last chance to do that, to like fight for the welfare of the other athletes. I think that's pretty admirable.
Yeah, it's pretty similar to people in creative works like photographers and graphic designers, tattoo artists too, I'm sure, where people approach them wanting things for free, work for free, and the payment back is exposure. It's like, I'll pay you an exposure. Like, what the heck? What? No, like that's not gonna pay my bills. Like, getting exposure. Like, yeah, it can help a little bit, but it's so insulting, So yeah, I think it's pretty similar. Did that ever happen to you, Mike? Like, people want to pay you an exposure?
Yes, I've had people come up to me and say, if you do a sleeve on me, they have a certain amount of eyes on them in the job that they do, that they can promote my work and things like that if I cut them a deal. And I would always say no. My time is worth money. So for me, I really didn't have that problem. But yes, I know a lot of people that have done that, have gone down that route where they do free work on people, which would have cost tens of thousands of dollars, and they get really fuck all out of it at the end.
Yeah, I've seen the same thing on like TikTok, like creators with a lot of followers, and they make a lot of money and they still want things for free. And again, the payment is exposure. It's like such bullshit. Like, pay what people are worth. Like, you can't just treat people like that. And I think especially as the ADCC organizer, like, I don't know, like, don't you feel bad not paying your athletes? Like, same with Dana White. Like, doesn't he feel bad? Like, I'd feel bad. Like, I want things to be fair always. And one thing that's interesting is the UFC for UFC 300, they're offering $300,000 for performance bonus and for what's the other one? No, it's like the knockout of the night, that kind of stuff. Yeah, they're doing $300,000 for this one, which is a substantial amount of money. And I'd be curious if they would be at a loss whatsoever, or if it would really affect them if they did that every single event or just paid their athletes more. I'm sure they'd be very profitable still. So if they can do it now, I don't see why they can't do it always.
They could do 10 times that for every event, and they would still be fine. Like I said earlier, I think it was John Nash pointed out that in the lawsuit, the antitrust suit, it's really interesting to look at. Basically, a bunch of fighters sued them, and it went to settlement. So obviously someone, either the fighters or the UFC, didn't actually want to take this thing to trial for fear of losing. But basically it stated that they're getting paid 10% of the net revenue of the UFC, which is like, $300,000 bonuses are cool and everything, but that's a peanut. That's fractions of what that company makes. Like, I don't know the exact number, but I believe it was in the billions of profit last year that the UFC made. In any other league, you would have to allocate 50% of that to the athletes. That's almost, if they made $2 billion, that's $1 billion that has to be advocated to these athletes. They're making a fraction of that. People see it and they go, oh, well, there's these locker room bonuses, these undisclosed bonuses. I hate that, man. I think it's, if you're saying fighter pay is fine because these guys are getting undisclosed bonuses in the back room, imagine that's your job and your boss says, I'm going to pay you less than minimum wage, but if you do a good job, I might, under the table, give you some extra money. But there's no guarantee that it will. I might not. So you have no idea how much money you're going to make, no matter how hard you work or how good of a job you do. If you get unlucky, you might just make less money, and you have to feed your family. Not only that, for these guys, like, you have to hire trainers, nutritionists. You got to fly to these events. You got to bring your team in. There's a lot of costs associated with this. And we're just telling them, like, oh yeah, but if you're really hungry and you knock the guy out, I'll give you an extra 10 grand. Man, like, Jordan, you've been in fights. I've been in fights. We've trained with guys in the gym. You can't always guarantee you're going to knock someone out or have a flashy submission. Sometimes you just have to get the job done. And to tell someone, or like maybe you get unlucky and you lose. You break your hand or something in the first round and you lose. Oh, here's half your pay now. Sucks for you. Unfortunate that you got unlucky in your fight and something bad happened. Or worse, the judges screw you out of a decision that maybe you should have won because these judges are inept and incompetent. That affects half your pay? That's absurd. Like, when people defend this, like, imagine your boss could just go, I didn't think you did a great job today or didn't work very hard. I think you were in the washroom on Instagram too long, scrolling through reels. I'm going to take half your pay away. You'd riot. You'd quit. You'd find another job. You'd think this is absurd. The problem with these fighters is there is no other job, man. There's nowhere else that pays as well. You have no choice. The UFC is a monopoly. ADCC for no-gi submission grappling is basically a monopoly. You have no other choice, so they can treat you like this.
Yeah, man. It's messed up big time.
I get fired up about it. I'm sorry. I think it's just absurd that we as athletes allow this, and I think a lot of these athletes in the UFC, I'll call it out. They might not like hearing it, but if you guys are okay with the way you get paid, and like you hear some UFC fighters be like, "Oh yeah, I'm getting paid fine. The UFC doesn't need to change. The way I get paid is fine." You're selfish. You're a selfish person, and if you weren't having the success you were having, if you were the guy who's struggling on the undercard, you would be complaining. The only reason you're not is because it's benefiting you. A lot of people, when the system is broken, but it's broken in their favor, they're super happy about it. You know, they're not going to complain. But like, this is why I think what Craig's doing is nice, because the system is broken in his favor, man. He probably makes a fortune off instructionals. I don't know what Craig makes. It's got to be a lot, though. He's one of the most popular grapplers in the world. And he's the one advocating for these other people. That takes a lot of courage. And, I think people might not give him the credit he needs because he's kind of a jokester. But, like, I do think this needs to be applauded more.
No, I totally agree.
I agree.
One thing I want to talk about, too, it's just, I don't know, just interesting. My black eye. I got a black eye, got punched in the face while grappling. I think I was in mount. I was in top position, and the guy turned really fast and punched me right in the face. And no hard feelings, not a big deal. This shit happens. I thought it was kind of funny though, because he didn't like acknowledge it until like 30 seconds in. He's like, "Oh, did I punch you? Or I hit you?" I'm like, "Yeah, you did," and it hurts really bad. And so now I've had a black eye for like a week. But it worked out good because I made a video called "How Jiu-Jitsu Broke My Body," and I have a black eye in it, so it actually worked out great timing. So it fits with the theme.
What is the worst injury that you've ever had?
Definitely my knee. Like I tore my meniscus and my MCL at the same time that I had meniscus surgery. And now it's pretty good, but like a piece of my meniscus would literally pop out, and I had to put it back in by planting my foot on the mat and or the ground, and then start rotating it so it pops back in. Yeah. And you could see it from the skin, which was such a weird thing, like seeing a little piece of my meniscus like pop in and out from the skin. So that was the worst, but they just took it out. I was rolling 8 days later, so I was good to go. Yeah. But I think my worst like nagging injury is like my fingers. Like you can hear.
Oh yeah,
I've done it before on a podcast, I'm pretty sure, but yeah, that doesn't feel good. You know what I mean? Like my hands do not feel good, which is one reason why I don't do a lot of gi anymore. But we talked about this too before. But I think, Joey, your worst injury is probably my fault when I did that hip throw on you and your foot stayed planted, and then your knee completely got fucked up. But I don't know. I imagine there hasn't been a worse injury than that.
I'll say this, man. Like that one's probably like the most catastrophic for amount of damage done to my body. But I guess it's actually a little over a year now, when I separated my AC joint in my shoulder, this has been way worse to deal with. Like, I would take both of my knees getting exploded over this shoulder injury, man. It's debilitating. It's a year later and it's still like problematic. Like, my elbow still can't go behind my rib cage. Like, if you're doing a push-up when you go all the way down to the ground, how your elbow goes back, my elbow can't go behind my rib cage. It's terrible. You use your arm for so much. The shoulder, like that ball and socket joint, is just an absolute piece of shit joint. Once you hurt it, it's so bad forever. I would take the knee injury was probably more catastrophic, but I would take mangled knees over the shoulder any day. At least the knee I can like train through, and I'm okay now. Like, hasn't been fixed, but it's functional.
It was definitely a catastrophic sight to see, like seeing your kneecap not where it's supposed to be, like on the side of your leg. I've never seen something like that before. And seeing that, it was like oh my God, like it was hard not to, freak out. And it was scary for sure.
Didn't it hurt as much as you would think?
No, I get it. Yeah.
Surprisingly not super painful. It was just more of the moment of like looking down and seeing your kneecap not where a kneecap should be. And you're like, uh-oh, that's probably not a good sign.
Yeah, you took it really well. Like that's one reason why I feel like it made me feel not better, but like not freak out as much of like, oh my God, because like Joey's not like, freaking out either. So yeah, I'd be like, oh my God, yeah, I don't know how I'd like deal with that mentally, seeing my kneecap over there.
I had the exact same thing happen. I over rotated, my foot stayed planted on the floor, and my kneecap ended up on the side of my leg, and they had to put it back in the hospital. But it's been a nagging injury. It's popped out a few times since, but now I just wear a knee brace. But the most nagging injury I have all the time, I guess, is just sciatica. Sciatica is really bad when it flares up. I just have to eat a handful of Advil and just suck it up and come to class. But it's so bad where I can't feel my feet.
That sucks.
Yeah,
that is bad, man. That's terrible.
I'm getting old. That's what happens when you get older, right?
Nah, you're not getting old. No, don't say that, because I've been feeling lately like I don't know, like I'm getting old. Like I just feel like I don't know. I guess an existential like crisis lately. Just seeing like kids I taught, they're like older now and I'm older now. My hairline's receding a little bit, all these things, and just makes me feel like, time spent on earth is a lot shorter than I once thought it was, which, it's kind of sad.
It hits you. I look down and my daughter's 25 years old. Holy shit. It hits you all of a sudden. I know exactly what you're talking about. It just hits you and you just feel it. You're like, holy, I can't believe I've been around this long. It's gone so fast.
Well, that's how I feel with Audrey too. Like my daughter, she's turning 11 next month, and I use her as a uke for the games now, because we're doing 100% ecological. But I've been using her as a uke, and like she is like adult size. Like I don't need to be super careful. Like I do, because she'll get mad at me. But like it's like doing with a regular adult, and it's just such a weird thing, because the way I remember her the most is 3-year-old Audrey, not like I remember her as a baby and past 3 years old, but that's what I remember the most of, like 3-year-old Audrey. And just such a weird thing to like, I don't know, that she's like an adult size now. She grew super fast for some reason. I don't really understand it. But the one injury I have, it's not an injury, it's just a weird thing, I guess. Like one time I hurt my neck, or my neck was hurting, and then the pain traveled to my shoulder blade, and then I couldn't get out of bed. Like I was like bedridden, because anytime I'd move, my muscles would hurt, but so would my skin. My skin would just burn like crazy for some reason. And now I have I have no feeling on my skin, on my shoulder blade and my lat. Like I can like poke it or scratch it and I feel nothing, but the other side I can feel it just fine. So it's such a weird thing. Like I don't know what's going on, like why my nerves aren't working.
That's
I
weird,
had that
man.
Boss Rutan thing for a while. Have you seen Boss Rutan's one arm? It's like one half the size of his other arm. I had that problem, same thing. I had a pinched nerve, and I actually lost size on my arm, but I went and saw a doctor, and they did a bunch of shit to it and fixed it. But thank God, because if you see Boss Rutan now, his one arm looks literally like it's 4 inches around. It's crazy, and it was from a pinched nerve in his neck, I believe.
Yeah, it must be similar with me. Yeah, it's a weird thing, because you could take a knife and like stab me right here in the skin. Maybe if you go further, I'd feel it, but like the skin, I can't feel it. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, nerve damage.
Yeah, thanks, Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
It's wild, the little injuries that accrue. Do you think you'll ever actually retire from grappling? Like, do you think that's something like the injuries will pile up and you'll be like, this is not worth it on my body anymore? Like, I know like your kids are starting to get older. Like one day you're going to have grandkids, hopefully. Like, I know for me, I think about that all the time. I'm like, man, I don't have kids yet, but I'd sure love to be able to like play with my kids when they're like growing up and not be crippled. I don't want to be that dad that's like, oh, dad's got a bad shoulder and 2 bad knees. He can't play catch with you in the backyard.
Yeah, like that is something I've been thinking about a lot lately of, how long can I do this for? I think now I don't really worry about injuries, because I feel like I can take care of myself so well. But just in general, like, am I going to be rolling when I'm 60 or 70? And if I'm not, what am I going to do for exercise? Because I don't like exercise. Like I don't like doing other stuff and going to the gym. I much prefer just grappling. So yeah, hopefully I can. Hopefully.
I'm hoping technology catches up to my injuries, and then I can grapple as long as I can.
Well, that's what I'm banking on too. It's just longevity solutions within like the health scientific world. Like it seems like things are getting more advanced every day, and yeah, maybe one day we'll never even die at all. You know, like Neuralink and stuff like that will just keep living. I don't know. I find this stuff pretty interesting.
I love it.
Yeah.
That'd be nice, man. If they make robot knees, I'll take one of those in a heartbeat. Like, just give me a bionic knee or something, I'm good to go.
Yeah, and like I wonder if you know, if it'll even be that, or if it'll be more so like something put into you where it just fixes it. You know, like nano whatever. I don't know. I've read a lot about this stuff, but then I can't remember as I'm trying to talk about it. But yeah, that'd be good for sure. What else was I going to mention? Oh yeah, one thing that's interesting. I don't know if you guys saw my reel. My reel's like where I use that sound of I don't know. You know what I'm talking about? Like those joke reels I've been doing.
I haven't seen it.
You know the ones I did with Jeff, like the
Yeah.
the training partner. Have you seen the Joey where it's like
Yeah.
nobody? Yeah, like that. Those are done really well. But what's really funny is they were on like the jiu-jitsu niche like algorithm, but now like right now they're on the gay algorithm, like because and it's pretty clear because I'm getting so many comments from gay people, you know, saying some sexually suggestive things to me. So like, you know, it's for some reason it's on there, and yeah, getting tons of comments lately, not from jiu-jitsu people. They're clearly, it's the gay community, which I appreciate their comments. They're saying nice things. It just, I never expected it to go that way.
It's a new demographic for you though, man. That's expanding the business model right there.
Yeah, maybe it'll get them into jiu-jitsu because I don't know, they definitely liked it for sure. Yeah, but yeah, I got to make more. Yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to mention that. I can't really go anywhere with that. Really, I just thought it was pretty funny. Because honestly, like I'm probably getting like 10 comments per day from the gay community lately. And before it was just the jiu-jitsu community. So it somehow spread to them. And then now it's in the algorithm for them.
How do you know? By username or?
No, just based off what they're saying.
Oh.
Yeah, they're just, they don't know anything about jiu-jitsu, but they know about, you know, what they like. So yeah, thanks guys.
Oh, that's good.
Which is
I
funny.
guess that's a good thing though, man, because the combat sports community is not necessarily the most open-minded community when it comes to this kind of stuff. So if your content can be a bridge to get these people interested in what we do, then hey, that's awesome. Good for the sport.
That's true. And people have asked me before that were gay that like, you know, they're worried about starting jiu-jitsu because what people are going to think if people are going to feel uncomfortable. But I think for the most part, you know, it's 2024. Like most people aren't bigoted like that, especially you know, our generation, like millennials and Gen X, and yeah, I think I don't think it's a problem for most people. I'm sure.
No, unless you're the Noguera brothers. They have flat out said that they will not train with gay men at all.
That's so dumb.
Yep. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Who cares what your sexual preference is when you train? That's the last thing on my mind.
Yeah, that's one thing I was actually wondering if Craig would catch flack for, like the keep jiu-jitsu gay stuff, which I think is really funny, but at the same time, it might be interpreted by people that it's like poking fun at gay people, you know? So I don't know. I'm surprised he didn't receive any backlash. Not that I think he deserves it, but just because I know how people are nowadays.
It's super popular shirt. I mean, every time I go to order it, it's out of stock every time. I've been trying to get that shirt for a year. So it is a popular item. People love it.
Craig just seems to have some sort of weird ability to like skirt the line of what's okay and what's not okay with like absolutely zero backlash or like problems. I don't know what it is about the guy. Maybe it's like because he's Australian, people just let him get away with stuff. But like he toes that line all the time, and people seem to love it. So that he's got something going for him there. I think if anyone else had come out with that shirt, maybe it would have been a problem. But for Craig, people are like, yeah, sure, that's on brand for him.
Even his instructionals, doesn't he have one called Power Bottom?
Yeah, they changed it though. Actually,
did they?
Yeah,
They changed that one.
yeah, they changed that one and a bunch of them actually. The ones that were like sexually suggestive. Yeah, they changed them. I don't know why.
For people who don't know, Craig once had an instructional called False Reap Allegations, which is that one's pushing the line, man. That's you know, that's a little. Don't know if we'll let this guy get away with that. I think anyone else comes out with that, the BJJ fanatics people are probably like, absolutely not gonna happen. But yeah, Craig's been doing this for a long time, and he just seems to like the people seem to love it. So I don't know. He's an interesting guy.
Yeah, like I think it's important to not important, but it's just it's fine to poke fun at what we do because it is kind of weird. You know, I remember when I first started, not when I first started training, like when I first heard about jiu-jitsu, and just I remember going to the gym, like, and there was a jiu-jitsu club at the gym, like it was a workout gym, and I saw them in closed guard. I was like, I'm never doing that. That's weird. But like now, it's like, no, get in my closed guard. It's fine. You know, it changes. But I was like, 13 years old too, and back then, like being called gay was like the biggest insult. Where like nowadays, people don't do that as much. You know.
The same thing happened when we were teaching at that class from the French school that came in. They were all teenagers, like say 12 to 14 or 15 years old. And whenever we'd show them anything in closed guard, you could literally hear the guys saying, "That's gay. I'm not doing that. I'm definitely not doing that." But then after a while, they got used to it, and everybody was doing it. Everybody was fine with it. But at first, the look on their face was like, "I am not going in between that guy's legs." You know.
Yeah, like it isn't a somewhat normal of a response. You know, like it is at first. It is kind of strange.
Yeah.
You ever have a moment though where you're doing our sport and you realize how like you're like, well, I can see why people think this is gay. Like I had one. Fuck, it would have been a few months ago. I was showing something from one of the games, like just showing an option from somewhere. And it was something like, when you're in like a half guard and you like reach underneath, you scoop under. I don't know what that sweep's called. But like you reach your bottom arm under their leg so you can get like underneath their hips. And it's in Noki. And as I went to reach, I was trying to tell people like, hey guys, it's not good enough to just have your hand under. I want to get my shoulder underneath their legs so that I can like off balance them. As I reached in, I was like, I want to do it quick. My hand went right up the shorts of the guy I was showing it on because they were loose shorts. And I was like, well, that's unpleasant. Just give him credit, man. He stone-faced it the whole time. He wasn't like, what are you doing up there, man? But there was just like the worst moment I've ever had teaching. I was like, what just happened there? And I'm like, all right, guys, just play the game. Whatever. I'm frazzled.
Well, how many dicks have you guys grabbed each? like I probably can remember like 5 times that I've grabbed a dick. I grabbed one only like a week ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago. Someone grabbed mine a week ago. Maybe not even. Maybe it was this week. And yeah, it was funny. So I'm just like, I didn't know what to say. I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. I think I said no problem or whatever. But he didn't even say anything. I don't know. It was just kind of a weird thing.
Well, there was one time I was rolling with another guy, and we were in an odd position, and a slow song came on from one of your playlists, and we both stopped, looked at each other's eyes, and just started laughing. You had to laugh at that moment. It was just like, for lack of a better word, I'm not even going to say it, but it was just a funny thing. I mean, we both still talk about it to this day, and it was, it's a fun memory to look back on. It was just an odd situation.
Yeah, you guys had a moment.
We did. We had a very intense moment.
Yeah.
You see, if we had this conversation with any group of guys who's never grappled or never trained, that would be like asking the question, how many dicks have you grabbed? And for jiu-jitsu guys, it's like probably quite a few, And it's not on purpose, by accident, it happens. You say that to most guys and they're like, wait, what? Like, zero should be the answer. And you're like, not in our sport, man.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, it definitely exposes you to things that you wouldn't have done otherwise, because how many sports do you have the opportunity to grab someone's dick,
I don't know. We can cut this story. I'll tell a little story. We can cut this. This might be too far, but I remember having a tournament years ago, and it's in the gi, and I'm trying to pass, and I was like, all right, I got to pin this guy's leg. I grabbed a grip. I shit you not, midway between the like waistline and the knee, and when I grabbed, I was like, there's something in my hand right now. And I was like, that shouldn't be there. What? And I looked at the guy, and he just smiled and giggled at me, and I was like, fuck, man.
Oh man!
Congratulations.
Yeah,
I win the match, but you win.
Yeah.
Actually, I remember how I grabbed it the other week ago. Like, he was in turtle, and you know when you grab like a scoop grip on the inside thigh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't aim correctly. It wasn't the thigh that I grabbed, but yeah, maybe you just had a big one too. Like
that grip's easy to screw up though, like that, because it gets slippery and it can slide. Yeah, that grip can get you in trouble.
Yeah, I definitely did, for sure. And like, even if you don't do any sports, then especially, like the chances of you grabbing someone's dick is pretty low, right?
I imagine it's pretty low in like tennis, though. I can't imagine a lot of that's going on in the tennis world.
Yeah, it's definitely just grappling sports. So I understand why people think it's weird, but it's not. It's good.
You get used to it, though. Like, I think you guys would probably agree. Like, and I know there's some women who are like worried about that feeling, but it's like, I think for most people when you're rolling, everything is so desexualized that it's just like, this is just grappling. Like I could not care less. I'm just focused on grappling. Like if you accidentally grab a dick, you're not like, oh my God, I grabbed a dick. You're just like, whatever, I'll move my hand. Like it's a thing that happened. Whoops, accident, move on. Time to focus on whatever I have to do in the moment right now.
And it's like, it's less noticeable when you're actually grappling, but when you're doing like technique or something, like I know when Mike's my uke, I have him in mounts, like I'm top mount. He's mentioned before, you can feel, what's going on down there.
Definitely. Yeah, it's been uncomfortable the first couple times, but after that, it's just like, fuck it, whatever it is, what it is. I have a dick on my belly right now, and I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, I feel something squishy. Yeah. Well, I don't know how you... Yeah, it happens for sure. I don't know what else we talk about.
I don't even know how
That's
much
all
of
I
this
had.
we can use.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. This might be the worst. We might get taken off YouTube for this one.
Possibly.
I hope not. This will be the first time I won't get fucking comments telling me I'm an idiot, though. So that'd be nice.
Well, I feel like a lot of people are agreeing with you lately.
It's shocking to me.
Especially with the self-defense thing. I was surprised. Because I don't know, because I don't really see it, because I think that like excessive force is real. And I feel like in that video, he was excessive. So I was so surprised. I thought that when you were saying what you said, that it would kind of get you into a bit of hot water with people, but it seemed like everyone agreed with you and disagreed with me.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm like the worst person in the world to get your self-defense advice from. Like, I appreciate the people who agreed with me, and some people had some really kind things to say. So, like, hey, I appreciate that, man. But, like, I am not a self-defense expert, man. I don't know. I'm not a legal expert. I don't know what's too much for. It's like, I tend not to get in a lot of, like, fist fights or altercations with people. So I, maybe don't take my advice out to the streets. Like, don't go to the bar being like, yeah, Joey said to break this guy's arm, so I'm going to go fuck some people up. Don't do that, man. Please don't. I actually got a message from my mom after that podcast. I think I hadn't talked to her today. She's like, just listen to your podcast. Please don't fight and break the arms of any homeless people or drunk people. And I was like, I don't really plan on it. It was more of a hypothetical, but.
Yeah, I think the guy in the video was definitely drunk and possibly homeless. He seemed just so defenseless to me. So, yeah, I don't know.
I still have yet to see the video.
Yeah, I can't find it either. But
I think they might have taken it down.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Do you think a safer bet would have been for that guy to transition, just put him out and then walk away instead of breaking his arm?
I mean, he elbowed him after breaking his arm. He could have elbowed him before breaking his arm, or not broken his arm at all. I feel like.
See, the strikes after the arm break are where I might say the line needs to be drawn. Like, the arm break is what it is. Like, he grappled the incapacitated guy. Do you really need to hit him a bunch after that? Was that necessary?
Yeah.
Super necessary.
And I think too, like, people are saying, you don't know if he has a knife or a gun or whatever. You got to do. But then I don't think that the arm bar is the best thing to do if you're considering all those things, because he still has his other arm available to pull out a knife or a gun. So I don't know. I feel like that was just kind of pointless.
It's also like, sorry, Mike. I was going to say, it's kind of like, we're like armchair quarterbacking this. Like, none of us know how that guy felt in that moment. Like, maybe he really did feel afraid for his life. Like, I would think not, given the fact that I heard he's a black belt or something.
Yeah.
Or like a very competent grappler. So I assume he probably didn't feel that way, but like, he might have. You don't know how people feel in the moment, and that really does change things. Like, if you're actually afraid for your life, you might react differently than if you were calm, cool, collected.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a huge component to it, that you don't know what they're feeling at the time. It's so hard to control your emotions because it's just so hectic. It's like, I don't like at all when UFC fighters, like MMA fighters, they punch someone after they're already knocked out. I hate seeing that. But I also understand that there's so much going on. It's just, it can be hard just to completely like take your finger off the trigger in a sense when like you're just in like kill mode.
But then there's some people that recognize that they're out cold, like Dan Henderson said. I knew he was out cold, and he just wanted to, just beat him up more after the Michael Bisping knockout.
Yeah, I lose a lot of respect for Dan. Having said that, I think that knockout and that extra punch were just super. Well, the knockout wasn't unnecessary. That punch after was super unnecessary.
Yeah, and then uses the logo for his brand now of him flying through the air with the second hit.
That's
I don't
fucked up.
love that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate though when you see a guy like knock someone down and you can tell they're going for the next punch, not knowing that the guy is out yet, just thinking maybe he's knocked down, and you see them able to like pull off at the last second and like, no, this guy's actually out. I don't need to land this punch, and they kind of like are able to like abort at the last second. I really like applaud those guys, because it would be easy to just continue through the motion, hit the guy, and be like, "Wow, ref hadn't stopped me yet. It was fine." But to have the like wherewithal in that moment to like when the adrenaline's high, you know, you think you might have just won the fight, everything's up, but to recognize that he's out and pull that punch, that, you know, that gets my respect when guys do that.
There's a good example of that recently. Was it Bryce
Mitchell?
Bryce Mitchell got knocked out, and the guy could have landed a shot or two after that, and he was knocked out pretty bad. And afterwards, Bryce Mitchell thanked him. He said thank you afterwards. You know, when he came around.
Thank God he didn't.
Yeah,
because
it was bad.
That knockout, like
he went stiff.
Oh man, that was hard to witness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that kind of stuff is. You know, like those are the things where it's like, you know, maybe you hit the guy, maybe he's fine after, but like that stuff's what can do damage to someone's career. I mean, how many fights have you seen where guys have this crazy back and forth fight, or someone gets knocked out and hit, and they never come back the same? Like they're just not the same person after that, and you wonder how much of that could have been avoided. And that to me is really sad.
Example of that, it would be the Rory McDonald versus it's one of the best fights ever. I don't know why.
The Lawler fight?
Lawler, yeah. Too. He was never the same fighter after that. I don't think he was. You know, I think there's some fights that you leave a piece of yourself in there and you just don't get back. I'm not a fighter. I've never fought in a cage like you guys have. But I mean, I can only imagine that that's true. That if sometimes you just leave a part of you in there, you're not the same afterwards.
I definitely think it is. My wonder sometimes is I wonder if these guys regret that. Like, could Rory have fought a different fight in that fight? Maybe not taken so much damage and maybe like prolonged his career. I wonder if they look back on those fights and go, man, I wish I'd done things differently, because that was the end of what I was. Like that changed my career.
Do you think are you going to have kids soon, do you think?
I'm torn, man. I'm torn. I don't know if I should podcast this stuff, but like, Paige and I both want kids one day. It's just like one of those things where I'm like, am I ready? I don't know. I'm not like teaching the kids class. I love it, man. Like I love, I've been teaching the kids class the last week because my kids constructor's been on vacation, and I genuinely like working with the kids. Like I find it rewarding, and I love seeing them have fun and stuff. I'm just really not good with them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, maybe it's different for you guys because you're both parents and you kind of like, no, I don't know. And it makes me worry. I'm so worried that I'm going to have a kid and not know what to do with it and not be a good dad kind of like, I'm going to try. I would obviously try. And like, I love the thing, but like, I just don't know how to talk to the thing.
Yeah. I mean, you figure it out ecologically.
Yeah.
It's scary though, man. Because like, at least with like jiu-jitsu, if I can't figure something out, like it's just a problem within grappling, and I have plenty of time. And if you fuck up a million times, it's fine. You'll learn eventually. But like, I feel like with like parenthood, it's so much harder because like I just wouldn't want to fuck up. I'd be so scared to make mistakes.
Yeah, it's normal though. Yeah. I mean, I made mistakes. You know, I'm sure Mike has too.
I made mistakes.
I mean, that's part of the process, right? That's ecologically. Make mistakes.
I know, but I'm just afraid of fucking up another human being.
Yeah.
Yeah, but hopefully soon. Hopefully not too many more years. I mean, I'm getting older, man. I'm turning 32 this year, so, you know.
It's gonna make it harder to compete for sure, big time.
Well, I'm planning on only competing a few more years. I talked with Paige, and we basically said like I'm not competing again after like 35. Like, actually, I think I said 34, but I'm going to give it a couple more years of competing. And then after that, I'm just not going to do it anymore. I'm going to transition into being just a coach. You know, like the injuries are piling up. Like I'm competing now, partly because it's a marketing expense for my gym. Like I came up with this thing this year. I'm doing every single tournament in Alberta. Every tournament that pops up, I'm doing. So for me, that's a marketing expense for the gym. I'm out, I'm repping the team. My students go, they see me leading the charge, but we're going to get to a point in a few years at least where, you know, I'm hopefully going to have enough students competing that it's going to be too much stress in one day to like focus on myself. Cause I find that very difficult. Like, I don't know if you find the same thing, like when you've competed with students, but like, it's so hard for me to switch the gears from coaching to competing, because as an athlete, like you do need to be a little bit selfish. Like I need my time, I need my focus, I need to do what I need to do to get ready and get in the zone and focus on what I've got to do. But if I'm running around like coaching my athletes and maybe they win and I get super elated and I'm happy because fuck, I love when my athletes win, man. I love nothing more than that. Like if I had a trade, like if some genie was like, hey, you can lose every match for the rest of your life, but your athletes will win every match. I'll take that every time, every single time. Suck for me, but I'll do that for them for sure. But, or like an athlete loses and I get like, I'm upset because I'm hurt because I want them to have that success. And then they're like, oh yeah, now you're up. You got to compete. And I've got to try and like, you know, change my mindset and get focused on what I got to do. And like in my head, I'm thinking about like, you know, did my guy get submitted because I did something wrong or I gave bad advice when I was coaching? And I'm thinking about that while I'm trying to compete with another skilled grappler. And it's, you know, it's hard. It takes a toll. So I think there's going to come a point where I'm going to have too many athletes and I'm just going to have to say like, I'm done with this. I'm just going to be a coach.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. Like when an athlete is failing in one area, like not doing well in one area, I feel like responsible. Like I should have prepared them more for that. And but it can be hard too because there's so many areas in jiu-jitsu that you need to be competent in. And if you're kind of lacking in one, and it can be exposed during a tournament, it's like shit. Like I feel like it's my fault almost, you know.
Yeah, and you never. The problem is like it's not like a one-off MMA fight or like a super fight where I can watch footage of the guy that my guy's going to fight and build a game plan and we know exactly what he's going to experience. Like for a lot of these tournaments, you're getting a guy you've probably never heard of. I might never have seen grapple, and it's like, okay, what's he going to do? And I might be able to make some inferences based on like, okay, I know what gym the guy comes from and I've seen a lot of their guys. I know they tend to be really good half guard players. So there's a high likelihood that this guy's a half guard player, but he might not be. So I have no idea. And then the match goes how it goes, and you never know what you're going to get. It's hard to make sure everyone's prepared. And it's hard to prepare athletes. Like I'm sure you have the same thing. You have big classes in your gym. If you've got someone getting ready for a tournament, you want to do your best to prepare them for the tournament. But I've also got 30 other people in this class that need my attention and need that. Like, you know, like I'm not going to talk about it too much because people yell at me in the comments and get sick of it, and the ecological stuff. So we play games. Now what I've started doing this week for some of my athletes that are competing, I'll give them a different game than the rest of the class. Like, hey man, the class is working on this. I need you doing this to get ready for next weekend. Like you have a separate focus because you're competing. You're so close out. It's not looking to add a ton more skills. I just want to sharpen you up in a couple of areas because realistically, you're not going to add a ton of skills in 2 weeks. But you can definitely improve little things in certain areas in 2 weeks. So there's that hard balance between like coaching athletes and coaching a group of people. It's not necessarily the same thing.
So when you have competitors and you're giving them like different games from the rest, are they tailored to those specific competitors, or is it just for competitors as a whole? Because that's one thing I wonder if like, is there games that are better for competitors? Like how do you differentiate a competition class from a regular class when it comes to games?
So for me, what I would do is like some competitors have games unique for them. Like, if I'm noticing that this guy has like a bad habit that he keeps doing in tournaments, like maybe he keeps getting to guard and he's too complacent from guard. And then the matches end up going to 0-0 and it's like, well, I guess we're going to a ref's decision again. Like that guy, I might give him games from guard where it's like, you've got to move, man. Like games that really encourage movement and like proactivity. Maybe I'll time constrain it so that he has to like be more active, just trying to constrain that. Or maybe I've got a guy who continually gets stuck in like a side control or something. Like you're going to do a bunch of escape games. But for the most part, I try and tailor it around the competition format itself. I know Greg said he doesn't do this. I think that's, maybe like I'm not going to say he's wrong, but in my room at least, I think that's smart. Like we train every day. to make everyone good grapplers in general. But when you're getting ready for a specific event, if they have a unique quirk to their rules, like this weekend, it's a sub-only format. If there's a draw in the bracket, there's an EBI tiebreaker. So my guy competing this weekend, hey man, we're doing EBI round. You're doing back escape rounds today. Everyone else is working on passing. You're doing back escapes all day, because this might come up in the tournament and I need you sharp in that aspect. Like, you have to be ready for this. One of my guys is doing the ADCC Montreal in a couple weeks. Unfortunately, I won't be there to coach him. I think he'll be fine, but I won't be there for him. So the next couple weeks, what we're really going to focus on is like things for ADCC. Like, there's a lot of ways to prevent scoring in ADCC with turtling. So we're going to work a lot on like, hey man, when we're passing, making sure this guy stays flat. How do I stop him from getting to turtle? And how do I turtle to prevent these points? Just little stuff where it's like, every tournament has its own unique like rules and quirks. And if we can be the gym that maybe takes the time to really understand those rules and quirks and know how to build our game around that, like, you can win matches. Like, I've beaten some better grapplers than me just because I know the rules better.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. You need to prepare for the environment. Different environments, it can change. But one thing you mentioned, which I want to bring up, is sometimes athletes, they become too complacent in their guard or wherever it is. It can be anywhere, and I feel like that's the one thing I notice the most when people start losing, is like they become too complacent, where it's like, no, you need to move, you need to get something going now, because if they don't, their situation's not going to change. So you can't just be complacent, and especially when you're down on points or you're in a bad position. Yeah, I think that's the most common thing that happens. It's just like they kind of like give up in a sense. And I think games like that are really important to combat that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I think that's like, of the matches I've watched, and I've watched thousands of matches, I think a lot of losses, people get really complacent in their losses. Maybe they're down 2 points. They see there's a minute and a half left, and they just kind of like resign themselves to, all right, well, I'm going to lose by 2 points. And it's like, hey man, you've got a minute and a half. Like, let's do something. I try and tell my students, like, I don't care if you lose by 2 points or you lose by sub because you were down 2 points and you just tried to make something happen and got caught. Like, I would prefer if, like, let's say, someone gets mount on you somehow and you're just like trying something silly. You're like, I got to get out of here. All my mount escapes aren't working. I'm going to do something silly to try and get out, and you get armbarred. I would prefer that rather than you get mounted, look at the clock and go, guess I'm going to be mounted for 5 minutes now and lose by 4 points. Try something. A loss is a loss. It doesn't matter if you lose by sub or points. At least try. Fight, do something. So, like, some guys are like, well, I didn't want to get submitted. And like, this is something that goes back to the gym that, like, I think we've talked about this on previous episodes. One of my biggest pet peeves as a coach is if you're the guy who goes, well, I rolled with this person and I didn't get tapped. I don't give a shit if you didn't get tapped. All that tells me is you weren't trying to get out. You were being lazy. You were focusing on, I'm just not going to get tapped. The goal of the game when I make games is never just don't get submitted. The goal of the game for the bottom person is get out in some form or another, because just not get submitted is shit jiu-jitsu. It's just sitting there waiting for the end, waiting for a loss. I want my guys to know the goal is never not to get submitted. The goal is to get out and submit.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that actually reminds me of something I'm seeing sometimes when we're doing our games. So like, just say it's like a side control game or just a chest-to-chest position type game, and the other person's just holding their grips to hold the person down, like the bottom person's holding the top person on top of them. So yeah, it's making it harder for the top person to advance, but I mean, you're also not achieving your goal of separating that chest-to-chest connection. So it's like they're playing to not lose rather than win. And I don't think that should be the right mentality. So I have to go over and explain, I don't know if that's wrong, according to ecological, views or whatever, to tell them, hey, like, if you hold like that, you're just like trying not to lose. Like, you want to try to win, like try to push away, not hold them onto you.
No, and I think that's like, people might say that's not ecological to tell them, but it's like, hey man, I gave you a game. If, let's say, you're bottom side control, maybe we're doing a base game. Top player's goal for the base game is just to hold the bottom player flat in side control. Keep them flat. Bottom player's trying to get on their side and get their frames in between. top player's secondary goal might be to remove frames if they get in between, so keep the arms out from in between you. That's a great game for side control. Bottom guy's trying to do all the stuff he wants to do, get frames, get on his side. Top player's trying to remove frames and keep him flat. Really, that's what side control comes down to for control. If my bottom player is just laying on his back and holding the guy, like, hey man, you're losing. Like, you're not even trying to, like, you can hold this guy. This is great. He's winning. You're holding him in a win. Like, I hope your arms are behind him because you're hugging him because he beat you so bad. Like, get these, like, try to win. If you're not trying to win, you're wasting your own time and your partner's time. I give you both goals in the game because you both have a way to win. It's a reason, like, I see some people try the ecological stuff and they'll make these games and there's only goals for one person. You can't have that, because then the bottom person can just play not to lose. They always have to be, like, when you make these games, they have to be goals that are antithetical. So if my job is to hold you flat, bottom guy has to be on his side. If my goal is to remove limbs from in between us and segment them, your goal is to get frames in between. These are always antithetical, so both people can't be winning. It is not possible. Someone is winning, someone is losing at all points during this exchange.
Sorry, I'm too dumb. What does antithetical mean?
Basically they're opposite. Yeah. So like, if I'm trying to keep you flat, you're trying to get on your side. We have opposite goals, in direct competition with each other. Like some people, I appreciate it, by the way. I'll throw a little shout out. A bunch of people have sent me, like, games that they play or asked for, like, my help constructing games because of the podcast. And I really appreciate that, guys. If it takes me a while to get back to you, or I only give you one game, just know that, like, it takes me a long time to design these games and it's a lot of work. So I can't send you 100 or 200 games. It would just take me too long to do this for everybody. I am going to be releasing some sort of, like, subscription platform for cheap where I'll actually help with, like, in depth with game design. It's just, it takes me a lot of time. But one of the things some people, when they send me their games and they'll ask for, like, feedback, is I'll be like, you've got great goals for the top player, but there's a loophole here where the bottom player and top player can both find this gray area where neither person is losing. We got to remove that. We got to constrain that out of the situation.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the goals need to be very clear too, to both parties. Otherwise it's just, like, confusing. Yeah. One thing, one, I guess, challenge I'm having is sometimes is figuring out the how much constraints to put on, where I feel like I don't want to constrain too much where they're not exploring other options, but then also not making it too open-ended where it's just like you can do whatever. Like, how do you kind of balance that?
So I'll kind of explain, and this might take a minute, so I hope people have the time to listen and don't get too sick of this. But so I start with every class our least variable game first. So let's say we're doing a side control game. I'll start with the game I literally just described. Top player is trying to hold the person flat and just remove frames, keep the guy's hands out from in between you. Bottom player is just trying to get on his side and get frames. Super simple. The goals are small. There's not a lot of variance there. It's typically going to be like not an easy game, like it's physically difficult, but very few people don't understand what to do in that game. It's straightforward. Hold them flat, move arms. Everyone can get that. Day one guys get that. Our next game, now I'll add in, your goal is still to do that, but now we're looking to do something else. Now maybe I'm not just trying to strip the arms from inside, but I'm trying to get his arm above his head. That's where we're going to be able to look for, like, arm triangles and stuff, you know. And bottom player, you're trying to keep your arms in. Same goal for you. You're just trying to get on your side. I've just added an extra task for the top player. The next game, I might add another task for the top player. Not only are you trying to get the guy's arm above his head, but now you are allowed to take mount if you want, if you can step over. So you're just like, I typically start very narrow. The goals are pretty straightforward. They're pretty narrow. And as we go through, they can get broader and broader and broader because people have more experience in that situation. So, like, the first couple of games, I'm going to make it very specific so that I'm getting a specific outcome. And as we go through, it will get like more diverse. So there'll be more things they can do if that becomes available. And I found a lot of success with that. I know some people that do ecological may think differently, but for me, that works really well.
Yeah. That's pretty much what I've been doing. But one example I think will help me understand too of what you think is best. So just say it's like half guard or quarter guard or whatever it is, and the goal is to pin the person on their back, clear, like, get your legs in front of them, pass. But then, like, in a real roll, you could also submit them. You could also do a rolling back attack where you don't need to clear your legs. So, but if you have it so open ended where they can do that, then it's basically just positional sparring, right? So like that's where I'm kind of struggling. And where I don't want them not to be able to do those things, or feel like they're not there, and explore those areas too. But I also want to keep it constrained to work on the skill of passing.
Yeah, so like the way I would do that specifically for that one is like, let's say we're in like a half guard situation, and my goal is to try to get the person to basically improve position from half guard. Sure, they could submit. Typically, I constrain most submissions out of my games. This is something that I don't think Greg does. I actually do that's really different. Most of my work in my gym is focused positionally. We do submissions. We typically add one submission-oriented game per night, usually at the end, differential learning style thing. But most of it's on positional work. So what I would say is like the first game is like we're going to be in half guard. My goal is just to remove a knee shield and get chest to chest, pin this guy. And game 2 now, my goal, I'm not going to say remove the knee shield. My goal in game 2 is just going to be to pin this guy flat to the mat, however I can. We also include back as pins. So if I say I'm going to pin the guy, if you can get chest to back connection, that's fine with me. You're allowed to take that. And then for a third game, I might go, okay, now we're going to focus on like a submission thing. So we're going to start from this half guard. I'm going to give up the underhook. My goal is to try to keep my partner down on the mat so I can't let him up with his underhook. And I'm trying to lock a figure 4 around his head, so like a Darce grip or a guillotine. And then that's a separate game based for that scenario. I tend not to do positional and submission within the same game because, like you said, it can just devolve into like positional sparring. And the other thing is for students who maybe aren't as like experienced, if I've got like a guy who's like on his second week and I put him in half guard and say, I'm looking to get you to pin this guy or submit him, he's going to be like, I don't even know what my options are from here. So I want to make my games very focused on specific outcomes. We tend to do like 6 or 7 games in a day. So if I have a bunch of outcomes that are possible from this position, I'll just gamify each outcome.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure.
And hopefully at the end of the day, they understand that these games can, and sometimes I know it's not technically right to do, but sometimes I'll go through and explain like in between 2 games when people need a rest, like, hey guys, remember how we talked about I could do this or this as options? Like these were the 2 goals of the different games. Well, these work in tandem. When I'm trying to get through this half guard, if the guy's leaning super heavy this way, I might like, we actually just did, you like this one because it's kind of based off one of your YouTube videos, headquarters passing. So one of the goals of the game was to put my knee to the ground going towards the trap knee. So like kind of like a side smash style. And then the next game was going the other way, kind of into like a knee slide style. And then at the end, I'm like, hey guys, so like we did games to get both of these outcomes. Both of these are going to lead to the same style of passing. Selecting which one to use in the moment is a skill, and I'm going to use that by paying attention to what this guy's doing with his legs. If he's leaning super far one side, I'm not going to try to force to the opposite direction. Now we're going to play a game where you can go either way. You have your choice. Pay attention to what your partner's doing and use that to let you help make the right choice.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think sometime we should just do like a Zoom call or something and just talk about ecological stuff. Because I've got a lot of... Yeah, I'd love to too, because I'm really getting into it and I'm really believing in it more and more, and just understanding it in general and being able to use the terminology correctly and understand people's arguments more. I still have some reservations of like things that I still think that it's okay to like show someone something, or it's okay to show like spend a little bit of time static, but I also I'm open-minded to my mind changing that way. But like I'm open-minded both ways. But like, yeah, I'm getting way more into ecological. I think it'd be really good to have a conversation, but that's not on the podcast because we might bore people too much with it.
No,
but,
I agree. Next time I'm out, if I can get out to Trenton again at some point, I'd love to just like do a class and we can chat about it or something. Like let's talk about, like, I think it'd be easier in person where we can like actually grab like humans and like go through what things look like. Because sometimes like you said, the terminology for this stuff can be difficult. So like parsing through words, like in my gym, we use some different terminology than they use on like the ecological Discord or like that Greg uses. This is like a little side tangent that actually this would probably be good in the podcast. Something I've learned, and I think most coaches probably understand this. I don't know if maybe they vocalize it like this. It actually doesn't matter what terminology you use as long as everyone in your gym understands the terminology and it's consistent. So like if you say something like, a scissor sweep, right? Everyone in your gym probably understands what you mean by scissor sweep for the most part, outside of like brand new people. But I would assume anyone past like a 1-stripe white belt in your gym knows what you mean when you say scissor sweep. That is congruent within your gym. Everyone understands this. It's common terminology. At another gym, if I took the same sweep and I called it a choppy kicky sweep, as long as everyone in my gym understands what I mean by choppy kicky sweep and they know exactly what I'm talking about, it doesn't matter that I called it something different than you. It has the same effect. Like the ecological stuff is the same way. Like when I use these terms with my students, it doesn't necessarily matter if it's the same thing like the ecological Discord would use or Greg would use. My students know what I mean by it, and I'm consistent with what I say.